I'm Julie Hardigan. Today we'll be talking about what's possibly the world's most popular and beloved fast food, pizza. Now you may already know that pizza originated as inexpensive handheld peasant food from Naples, Italy. But did you know it didn't actually grow in popularity until it came to the US, and it really became popular as a result of World War II? Today, it's estimated that 3 billion pizzas are sold in the US alone each year, with an average of 46 slices per person. When we come back, we'll learn more about pizza's path to glory and visit one of the most highly rated wood-fired Neapolitan pizza restaurants in New York City to sample some of the best.
How can you save time and money when you shop? Get into the habit of buying your store's store brands. You get the same quality as national brand and save at the cash register. No apps, no coupons, just money in your pocket. Give store brands a try and smile your way through the supermarket.
Welcome back to our pizza history lesson. Now, flatbreads have been around for thousands of years and were enjoyed by the ancient Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Romans. But it was in the bustling waterfront city of Naples in the 1700s that the working poor began creating a new type of flatbread. With toppings such as cheese, anchovies, oil, and tomatoes, the dish we know as pizza was created. Born out of necessity and sold out of boxes, pizza was actually considered disgusting by Italy's elite and visitors to the young country too. In fact, the first cookbooks from Italy in the late 1800s pointedly ignored pizza altogether. Now, Italy had unified as a country in 1861, and it wasn't until King Umberto and Queen Margherita visited Naples in 1889 that pizza gained any legitimacy. Apparently, the king and queen were tired of dining on high-end French cuisine, and they wanted to give the local specialty a try. Their favorite variation was a mix of white cheese, red tomatoes, and green basil in the color of the Italian flag, and the Margherita pizza was born. But even royal approval didn't do the trick. Adverse economic conditions forced 4 million Southern Italians to come to America by 1900, and they brought their beloved cheap eat with them to cities like New York, St. Louis, New Haven, and Chicago. Lombardi's on Spring Street in New York City was the first licensed pizza restaurant in 1905. And while pizza was popular with Italian immigrants, it wasn't until the returning GIs from World War II requested the dish that pizza exploded in popularity across the US and then around the world. It resulted in the proliferation of everything from Chicago-style deep dish pizza, gourmet California pizza, chain pizza restaurants, the introduction of frozen pizzas, and slice shops. But it's the original Neapolitan pizza that we're after today, and no better place to try it than Brooklyn's beloved Paulie Gee's. Open since 2010 and often cited as one of the best pizza restaurants in the country, Paulie is dedicated to replicating the Neapolitan style, even importing his pizza oven from Italy. The chef in me loves his authenticity, but also how he lovingly tops each pie with creative, locally sourced ingredients. The lines start at 4 p.m. with no reservations or takeout allowed. Let's take a look inside and chat with the legend himself, and then we'll come back to the studio where I'll show you how to make classic Neapolitan pizza at home. So here we are at Paulie Gee's, and thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great to have you here.
So we're going to get into learning how to make Naples-inspired pizza from the master. But the first thing I want to hear about, and I'm sure you're all curious too, is about this gorgeous oven behind us, but also, Paulie, how did you get into pizza making and learn how to master this craft?
Well, I always loved to cook, but I never made pizza. And I was in a career that I really wasn't suited for. I was masquerading as a corporate IT professional, and it wasn't working out, and I had to do something. And I noticed that pizza was a lot simpler than, a whole restaurant that you have to run. And that emboldened me. It allowed me to take the risk to say I was going to open up a pizzeria, and then I went from there. I built an oven at home. I found free plans online on fornobravo.com that have free Pompeii oven plans. I found a friend, or I had a friend who had a passion for masonry. I got him to help me. I built the oven, and I started telling people I was going to open up a pizzeria. Because you got to speak it into existence.
Definitely speak it into existence. And how long did it take for you to build your own pizza making oven at home in your yard? I guess in your yard, yeah?
It took about 3 months to build the oven from start to finish, with some encouragement from my son who was coming home for Thanksgiving from the Air Force Academy, and he told me that I had to have pizza coming out of that oven when he came home. So.
And of course, it's all about the dough. So how did you learn how to make your own dough, and how many tries did it take to get it right so it was coming out delicious and puffy and that leopard spotting, all the gorgeousness we want in Naples-style dough?
I started with a recipe in Peter Reinhardt's American Pie, the Neapolitan recipe, and I started playing around with it. I actually used to buy the dough at Stop and Shop in Lyons, New Jersey, and use that, and I started making my own, and I just played around. I tried different hydration levels, different types of yeast, different fermentation times, and just kept on going and going until I got the results I wanted.
I know, I want to hear a lot more about, so it's a lot about the fine balance between temperature and hydration and time in the oven, right, to get that perfect result?
Yes, heat in the oven. My dough recipe is formulated for that oven to be 1,000 degrees. If it's 100, 150 degrees lower, you're going to get a doughy pizza. I could look at it and know, just by looking at the spots, if that pizza is made correctly.
So how do you decide when a crust is perfect, when it's done? Like, what were you looking for? What are the characteristics that people at home should be looking for in really top quality pizza?
If it's cooked properly, the proper temperature, the little spots will be on there, very little spots in abundance, with very little contrast between the spots and the rest of the dough. If the oven's not hot enough, you'll have a real high contrast. The dough will look almost white, and there'll be big bubbles, almost the size of a quarter sometimes, maybe a dime. The proper spots will be like a little pin almost. And I could tell if it's like that. And I think the science behind it is, I think if the oven's hot enough, the whole pie seals up very quickly, and then the air can't push out, and all it can do is push up those little bitty spots rather than a big bubble. If you see a big bubble, something ain't right.
Yeah, it really is a science and an art. It's like combining the two to get it just right. And what are you looking for in the bottom? Like a nice chew and a pull, or foldable? Like, these are all things that I've heard discussed about Naples-style pizza.
Well, our dough is a little less wet than a true Neapolitan pizza, but there's a little bit of a chew to it. It's not a crisp bottom like you'd get on a New York style pizza or some other styles of pizza. And there should be some spotting under there too. You should have, a nice little bit of charge, not real burn, but char.
And by the way, guys, Paulie also has an incredible slice shop, so more traditional New York style pizza. So he really is an expert in all different types of crust. But what I really want to know right now is, how did you learn to transfer your dough and your pizza making from your backyard oven to this gorgeous oven back here? And where did you get this baby anyway?
Well, what happened was, the oven I built at home was the same design. It's an igloo. The Eskimos knew what they were doing. It's the same oven that was found in Pompeii that was built 2,000 years ago. And I used that design, and I talked to other people who use these ovens to learn how to cook in them, and I experimented at home and over and over. And then when I contracted with Stefano Ferrara in Naples to build this. It was built over there and shipped over here, and we brought it in, and I started playing with it. Practice makes improvement.
Practice definitely makes perfect, for sure. How long did it take for you to
Improvement.
just to get it right, to get those little tweaks? So can you explain a little bit for our viewer at home, why domed ovens, why round, why this style oven? What's so important about that with the heat distribution?
You got to ask the Eskimos.
Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the heat circulating and going up and over. And
one thing I'll tell you, right now, if you look, the fire's in the middle, but we're going to be moving that fire over. You see a lot of people, they make pizza with the fire in the back. The air does not flow properly when you do that. You have to have the oven on the fire on the side. The air comes in. There's no chimney inside that oven. The air comes in, it goes past the fire, comes back out, and so it's cooking the top of the pizza as it flows back out. And right under where it says Napoli is what they call an eyebrow hood. And the air, the hot air, rises into there and out, and it's that flow. The air is actually hotter when it comes back out than it was going in, and that's what cooks the pie properly. So if you ever see anybody with the fire in the back, tell them they don't know what they're doing.
So what we're doing right now then is preheating the oven, yes?
Yes, we're preheating it evenly. That's why the fire's in the middle right now. And once it gets to 1,000 degrees, we'll move the fire over, and then we'll be able to cook the pizzas properly.
1,000 degrees, that's amazing. So I'm gonna have to come up with a way for people at home, maybe you can help me brainstorm this, how they can replicate that experience in their oven. But what are you gonna make us today? Because I know you do some really interesting flavored pizzas here too.
I'm going to do the Monte Cristo, which was inspired by the sandwich that we served during a little 6 weeks worth of brunch that we did way back. And we kept it, we liked it so much, we kept it on the menu when we stopped brunch. It's with mild Gouda, thinly sliced Canadian bacon, and a post-oven drizzle of pure maple syrup. Okay.
I love Monte Cristos for sure. 1,000 degrees. So how long does it take to cook a pie at 1,000 degrees?
About a minute and a half, depending on how much we've been using the oven in the past few minutes.
Amazing. It's amazing. And how many pies at a time do you do in there?
We only do 4. You could do more if we want, but the idea is to get the pizzas out quickly to people. If you do more, you may wind up, burning one. So we stick with 4.
Okay, so I have to ask, you have such a gorgeous menu with so many different toppings for your pizzas. What is one of your customers' favorites? What's the top seller?
Well, we don't have customers. We have guests. And by far, they love the Hellboy. It's like a pepperoni pizza, but only made with hot supersada, topped with hot honey when it comes out of the oven.
That sounds so delicious. I do love hot honey on my pizza too. It's like a spicy version of a pepperoni, I guess, right? Pizza, basically? Your own take.
Yes. But with hot supersada from Sal Maria Bellese, by the way, which is really good hot supersada.
You are making me so hungry over here. I can't wait for you to make pizza for us.
You mean you can hardly wait? Well, you won't have to wait too long. Let's get going.
Let's do this. So we're ready to go. Paulie just moved the fire over and cleaned out the oven, and we're going to get started. So what is our first step?
Well, we're going to stretch the dough. We're going to take some dough that was made here with some 00 flour, and we have it sitting here in some semolina flour. The reason we use semolina flour when we stretch the dough and put it in the oven is because unlike the 00 flour, it doesn't burn. It toasts, okay? So we just take the dough and kind of flatten it out, and we work it that way, and we spin it around. You got to make sure you have the top of the dough on top. Just keep on working it out towards the end.
How long did it take for you to learn this technique?
About a week. Because when we first opened up, that's when I started doing it. I learned from a guy named Angelo Womack. He used to work at Roberta's, and then he opened up his own place with his brother-in-law out in California in Los Gatos, and now he's back in New York. He missed New York. He's back here, and he started something called Rad Time Pizza, and he was a great teacher. The people at Roberta's were very helpful to me when I first opened.
It sounds like it's a very generous field with people collaborating and working together and sharing a certain amount of information anyway.
Yes, there's an enormous pizza brotherhood out there, a lot of information. I like to keep a few things secret, but not much. And everybody shares, and really, those guys at Roberta's, Anthony Falco, came and taught us how to prep in the kitchen when we didn't know what we were doing. And this was all when we opened, not before. It was seat of the pants.
Right, I should have mentioned, guys, Paulie has never had a restaurant before this, so he dove in not only to Naples-style pizza, but to owning a restaurant, and a very successful one at that. So are you going to toss this dough, or?
Throw is for show.
Throws for show. You heard it right here.
Using the Egyptian method, and you may ask, well, why do you call it the Egyptian method? Well, the reason is, one night we were looking to hire a pizza maker, my son and I, because my son was my first pizza maker. This Egyptian came in and tried out, and he taught us this method. So we call it the Egyptian method.
Very cool. Well, we were talking earlier about flatbreads date way back to the Egyptians, the Romans, and such. So, I'm sure there's like
That has nothing to do with it. It's just, this guy learned this method actually from a place that he worked that's around the corner now called Fornino, and that's where he learned it.
So I'm curious, how do we know when it's stretched properly, when it's done?
There you go.
Is there a thickness we're looking for? Obviously no tears.
You want it as evenly as possible. You're always going to have a little more on the end here. Mm-hmm. Although we don't get like a really big puff, but you just want as evenly as possible, with just a little bit on the end there. And then you can start putting your toppings on that, and never too much. You don't want to weigh it down. You want to balance your ingredients. Okay, and that's it. You ready for me to dress this thing?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right. And this one's the Monte Cristo. We're going to start with some mild Gouda. Okay, there's not much on this pie. It's very simple. 3 ingredients: the Gouda, the thinly sliced Canadian bacon, and that pure maple syrup when it comes out of the oven. I think that's enough.
So what are some of the other inventive pie flavors that you've come up with over the years?
Most recently, I came up with the Better Off Fed, which is an homage to the Philly roast pork sandwich. I have a Reuben pie, which is an homage to the Reuben sandwich. We have a pie called a niece and a nephew that has anisette cream on it and braised fennel. The Cherry Jones, which has dried Bing cherries and gorgonzola and prosciutto and orange blossom honey, and a lot more.
They all sound
You ready for me to
fantastic.
put this thing in the oven?
One more piece of wood to get the right amount of flame.
We're going to pick this pie up with our placing peel, a little magical placing peel. Not everybody can use it the way I do. I seem to have the magic touch. And we're going to bring this over to the oven. We're going to place it in there. Notice the name, the placing peel. And we're going to let the pie sit there until it firms up underneath so that we could get under there and we could turn the pie. Because the pie cooks much more on one side, obviously, than the other. Now we're slipping the turning peel under there, or what we call the banjo peel, and we're turning the pie to get a nice even bake. And then we're gonna dome it a little bit to get the middle of the pie cooked as well. And then we're gonna pull it out.
Okay, wow, that is just gorgeous. Look at that. So like you were saying, we're looking for the leopard spotting, right?
That's what's happening when the oven is 1,000 degrees. You get these nice little spots, and there's not a lot of high contrast. It doesn't look like white like that. Nice and brown like that.
And what's this called? I mean, a lot of people at home might call that the crust, but it has an Italian term actually for what's going on.
Cornicione.
Cornicione. And what does that mean?
It's the cornice.
The cornice, like the molding around a room. So the Italians call that the cornicione. And I think we have one more bit, the final garnish.
Well, no, the first thing we have to do is cut the pie, and then you put the maple syrup on. Nice whack. Okay. We like to cut our pies in 6.
That's official, a nice whack.
There you go.
That looks incredible.
And then we give it a little drizzle of pure maple syrup. Okay. And what I like to do is when you're done, save the crust. There's always a little maple syrup on the tray. Drag the crust through the maple syrup and put some cold salted butter on it.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Seriously.
You got to have the salted butter. That's definitely the key. Yes.
Cold, too.
Yes. Thank you so much. I can't wait to try some.
You mean you can hardly wait.
You got me again. Thank you, Paulie Gee, for having us out here to learn all about Naples-inspired pizza and all of your tips and tricks.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Now the best part is we get to eat it.
I cannot wait. I'm starving. I'm sure you guys are. I can hardly wait. He finally got me 3 times the charm. So now we're going to head back to the studio, guys. I'm going to show you how to make Naples-inspired pizza at home. Now, Paulie was very secretive about his dough recipe, and I know you don't have a 1,000-degree wood-fired oven in your kitchen, but don't worry. I'm going to show you how to make excellent Naples-style dough at home in 3 easy steps using just a handful of ingredients that you can get at your supermarket or you might already have on hand. And by the way, if you don't want to make dough, I'm also going to show you how to get great results with store-bought dough or dough that you pick up at your local pizza place. So let's get started. You will need a stand mixer to make the handmade dough. And what we're gonna do, first step, is just mix 3 ingredients together. It's 2½ cups of bread flour. We're using bread flour here because it has a higher protein content for better gluten, which basically means you're gonna get that nice chewy texture when your dough is done. Next, we're adding in 1½ cups of cold water, 1/8 of a teaspoon of active dry yeast. Again, all things you can get at your local supermarket. Just mix it together, and once everything is combined, we're just going to cover it tightly with some plastic wrap and let it hang out for the day for about 24 hours on your kitchen counter. And this is called the starter. So it's step 1 in making your own Naples-style dough. So we've let this sit for 24 hours at room temperature, just hanging out on your counter. And let's take a look at what's going on inside the bowl. The yeast is doing its thing, creating nice big bubbles. So now for step 2 of our dough, we're just gonna add some of the same ingredients we used before. Another 1/8 of a teaspoon of active dry yeast, another 1½ cups of cold water, more bread flour, 4 2/3 cups, and finally 3½ teaspoons of salt. That's gonna give it really great flavor. Now we're gonna let your stand mixer do all the work. There's no kneading for you. This is very simple. We're gonna let this run for first 8 minutes and then 4. And by the way, if your stand mixer isn't big enough and the bowl isn't big enough, you can divide the dough in half and you can run half at one point and half at the next point. And then I'll show you step 3 in making our dough. So that's step 2 of making your dough. You're gonna let your stand mixer do all the work, no kneading for you. Let it run for 8 minutes on low and then 4 minutes on medium low. Then cover the bowl with plastic wrap and tuck it in the fridge for overnight to let the yeast do its thing. So after 24 hours in the fridge, this is what your dough is going to look like. It's puffed up, the yeast did its thing, it's nice and bubbly, and now we're just going to divide it into 6 balls. This recipe makes enough for 6 personal-sized pizzas. What you're gonna do first, before you take this out, is flour your board so it won't stick. And I'm using the same bread flour that I used in the recipe itself. It's good to have a second board handy too. After you cut the dough, you're gonna roll it into individual balls over here. Okay, so we're gonna unmold this onto our cutting board. It's a little sticky, so you're gonna wanna just go around the edges with your spatula to get all of the dough out. Okay, next step. This is an excellent kitchen tool for you guys to know about. It's called a pastry cutter or a bench scraper, and it's used in a lot of bread baking and pastry kitchens to cut dough. But honestly, guys, for cooking at home, you can also use it to scrape ingredients off your cutting board into a pot or into a bowl. So these are just very handy to have around. So what I'm gonna do now is divide this dough into 6 even pieces and roll it into a ball. So we'll just cut it into kind of a Y shape. Take some out. This is the fun part. If you have kids, by the way, get them involved here. They'll be so happy. Next, onto this floured board, we are going to form it into a ball. No rings when you're doing this recipe, by the way. Once you've formed it into a ball, you're gonna do this for all 6. Now you're gonna put it into an airtight container to let it rest for the day so it'll be ready to stretch out. You leave it at room temperature for the day, or if you wanna use it the next day or 2 days later, you just pop it into the fridge. But keep it covered because if air comes into contact with the dough, it'll develop a bit of a skin and be a lot harder to stretch out later. So that's it. That's our 3-step dough. And now, after it is sat for a little while, we're ready to use it. By the way, if you don't want to make your own dough, you can absolutely use store-bought for this, or another little tip is to go to your local pizza place and buy some of their dough. What is very important is to make sure that your dough is at room temperature when you're going to stretch it out, which is what I'm going to do now. Now, if you weren't ready to use this homemade dough right now, you could keep it in the fridge for a few days, or you could also freeze the individual balls for a later date. Again, bring it to room temperature before you stretch it out. So we're gonna flour our board a little bit. And as we saw Paulie doing, we're just gonna gently start to stretch it out. It's developed gluten, so it's gonna be fighting us a little bit. We wanna stretch it. Now remember what he said, right? Throwing is for showing. So what I'm doing is just kind of putting my hands underneath the dough to give it a nice even stretch. Because we're making Naples style pizza, we want to leave a little bit of a border because that's what's gonna puff up and give us that gorgeous leopard spotting in a minute. And if you really want to play and have fun, you probably were cracking up watching us, but you can also do the move where you're stretching and letting gravity help you stretch the dough out like this. What we don't want to do is tear the dough because it can be a little hard to patch, although don't fret if you do. You can pinch it back together, it'll be fine. So now that we have our dough all stretched out, we're going for 9 or 10 inches across. I'm going to tell you how we are going to get excellent Naples style results in your home oven without the 1,000-degree wood-fired oven like Paulie had. All you need are a few things you probably already have on hand: a 9 or 10-inch cast iron pan and a cookie sheet. So no pizza stones, no pizza steels, no fancy gadgets whatsoever. What you're going to do is preheat your oven to 550 degrees, or as high as it will go, and let it really heat up for a while you're stretching out your dough. The other thing you're going to do is have your cast iron skillet heating up on the stove top so that gets nice and hot. We're gonna bake the pizza in there. The whole idea is to mimic all of that really, really high heat. Now to assemble our pizza, we're gonna put it on the cookie sheet first. We're gonna flour it so it doesn't stick. And then once it's assembled, we'll slide it into the hot cast iron pan. And I'll tell you how to continue from there. So we move our dough over to the baking sheet. Now, you can have fun with toppings. I mean, you saw how many delicious options Paulie had, right? And I'm sure you've had lots of really amazing gourmet pizzas. Today, I'm gonna stick with the classic and make a margarita in honor of the one that started it all. So I'm just using some regular marinara sauce. Now, with this pizza, you don't wanna load it up. You wanna stick all in the center, and you wanna make sure to leave an outside border so that that crust can rise and get all spotted and beautiful and delicious, just like we saw. Okay, so once we spread our sauce, now we're gonna top it with some nice fresh mozzarella. You can use regular mozzarella too, but fresh is classic and it just has that beautiful chew and it melts really, really nicely. And you don't wanna overload this pizza either. I mean, Naples style pizza is really all about the crust. Now that our pizza's assembled, carefully slide it into your cast iron skillet. That's why we floured our cookie sheet. It's probably gonna go in a little uneven. Using your oven mitt, you're gonna shake the pan to get it to spread out evenly. Now our oven has been at 550, right? And this pan is hot. Here's the next step. Turn your oven off, turn the broiler to its highest setting, and we're gonna pop this hot cast iron pan under the broiler for 3 to 4 minutes. That's what's gonna mimic the 1,000-degree oven to get that beautiful leopard spotting and that gorgeous risen crust and deliciously melted cheese in no time. So this is it, you guys. After 3 to 4 minutes in the oven, we've got gorgeous leopard spotting around the crust. It's risen, it has a nice chew to it. Our mozzarella is gorgeously melted, and now it's time to top it. So the classic margarita is topped with some torn basil, which I love. You're gonna let this pizza rest in the cast iron pan for a little bit too before you take it out to slice it. Some of my favorite toppings are also fresh oregano and hot pepper flakes. Voila, that is it. We can make our own Naples-style pizza at home using easy-to-find ingredients in our home oven. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to the Store Brands USA YouTube channel below and stay tuned for the next episode.